The Israelite conquering of Rahab's city of Jericho has been spiritually interpreted in a variety of ways. Joshua's careful planning of the attack by sending spies into the city represents, Hamilton interprets, the collaborative dimension of divine providence. Even though God promised Joshua that he would be aided by God as Moses was, this promise did not nullify human responsibility, writes Hamilton. Instead, the promises are brought about in a collaborative manner along the lines of faith without works is dead. Gregory of Nyssa interprets both what Joshua and the Israelites left behind when crossing the Jordan River and what they encountered and destroyed as representing sin. And I quote, "Imitate Joshua the son of Nun, carry the gospel as he carried the ark, leave the desert, that is to say, sin, cross the Jordan, hasten towards life according to Christ, towards the earth that bears the fruits of joy, where run, according to the promise, streams of milk and honey. Overthrow Jericho, the old dwelling place, do not leave it fortified. All these things are figures of ourselves. All are prefigurations of realities that now are made manifest." The 12 stones that God commanded Joshua to take out of the Jordan River, according to the number of the tribes, and place on the west bank of the Jordan, are interpreted by church fathers in reference to Christ's mission. In addition to these stones, Joshua also placed another set of 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant had stood. Joshua 4:9. Interpreting the latter set of stones, Gregory of Nyssa asserts, "It is clear that Joshua also, who set up the 12 stones in the stream, the Jordan River, was anticipating the coming of the 12 disciples, the ministers of baptism." Reflection on the way the Israelites defeated and destroyed Jericho after crossing the Jordan has yielded a variety of interpretations. Maximus of Turin interpreted the destruction of Jericho as a symbol of Christ coming at the end of time, when the heavens will pass away with a loud noise, and the elements will be dissolved with fire, and the earth and the works that are upon it will be burned up. 2 Peter 3:10. And what remains will be transformed into new heavens and a new earth. 2 Peter 3:13. Maximus highlights the 7 days that God commanded the Israelites to march around the city of Jericho, following 7 priests blowing ram's horns as a judgment on the entire world that was created in 7 days and afterwards sank into the sin. Similarly, St. Paul teaches that the end of the world will come after Christ returns from heaven and with the sound of the trumpet of God. 1 Thessalonians 4:16. Both judgments, the judgment of Jericho and the judgment at the end of time, are followed by destruction that takes place within a liturgical context in which God directly intervenes in history. The destruction of evil, represented by Jericho's demise, and the triumph of good does not take place primarily because of man's military might and cunning, but is rather an action that is essentially a divine act that invites the participation of human action. Reflecting this understanding, St. Augustine writes, and I quote, "So the walls of that city called Jericho fell when they had been encircled 7 times by the Ark of the Covenant. What then does the announcement of the kingdom of heaven portend, signified by the encircling of the Ark, except that all the battlements of mortal life, that is all the hope of this world, which is opposed to the hope of the world to come, will be destroyed by the 7-fold gift of the Holy Spirit, working through the free will. For those walls fell of their own accord, not by any violent push of the ark in its circuit." Like Augustine, Dom Scupoli, in The Spiritual Combat, teaches that doing good, avoiding evil, and growing in holiness is to take place within the context of collaboration between God and human beings. Scupoli writes, I quote, "Since, therefore, you seek the highest degree of perfection, you must wage continual warfare against yourself and employ your entire strength in demolishing every vicious inclination, however trivial. It is true, considering things in themselves, that the conversion of a soul is without doubt infinitely more acceptable to the divine majesty than the mortification of a disorderly affection. Yet, every person in his own particular sphere should begin with what is immediately required of him. Now that you know what Christian perfection is, and that, in order to attain it, you must resolve on a perpetual warfare with yourself, begin by providing yourself with 4 weapons, without which it is impossible to gain the victory in the spiritual combat: distrust of oneself, confidence in God, proper use of the faculties of body and mind, and the duty of prayer. At first, it may appear that Scupoli is stressing human effort more than God's grace. However, a more careful look indicates that the emphasis is not on human effort, but on reliance on God, as the last few lines of the quoted passage make explicit. 3 of the 4 weapons used to be victorious in spiritual combat are all ways of relying on God and His strength, while relying less on one's own efforts: distrust of oneself, confidence in God, and prayer. The 3rd weapon is proper use of the faculties of body and mind, which only can take place if trust is placed primarily in God, by acknowledging that victory is essentially a gift of God, in a similar way as victory for the Israelites over Jericho was primarily, writes Hahn, a gift that God is giving to Israel. Only secondarily is it something to be taken by conquest.